Welcome to the Simply Wild podcast. I'm your host, Sadie Jane, and we are here to find the wild within us. And I have to start this episode off with quite the apology because I led us astray last episode when I was aggressively talking about the conversation behind Jenna and Andrew and them coming on the podcast. And guess what never happened? They never came on because if you couldn't tell, we were psychotic on the episode together because that's just how we are together. And it took way too long to record. Like, I think Jeff ended up clipping 15 to 20 minutes out because we had dogs barking, kids, tile guys. There was just chaos. So by the time we got done recording, they had to go home. But rest assured, we are going to drive the podcast equipment down and have a conversation with them because they're some of our dearest friends. And I would just love to interview them. I think it'd be a really fun episode. So instead of that today, happy Friday. And we are going to discuss, man, so many thoughts that are on. This is going to be a really fun episode, I think, because there are thoughts I've been writing down in my notes that I've been wanting to expand on and talk to you, all of you, about. But I haven't had a place for it. That's what the podcast is for. And essentially, I'm titling this Eclipse Thoughts because we're going to talk about the diet I'm on. I'm dieting the rose. You might not know what the hell that is. That's okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown. I'm going to talk about volunteering at the women's shelter. I'm going to talk about Huberman and the scandal with Huberman that just came out. I'm going to talk about healing. I'm going to talk about mother wounds. I'm going to talk about parent wounds. So it's going to be a deep podcast that I think is going to be really powerful. And I have some poems actually to read. I don't know. Do people recite poems on podcasts? I don't know. I'm going to do it because I've been doing a lot of writing recently and I've had a really strong pull to start doing some guided meditations on here as well. If you are new here and don't know what I do, I do many things. There are many hats here. I'm a women's wellness and business coach, and I have an app with hundreds of mindful meditations and movement, workouts, yoga, somatics. So it's not like I need to record meditations here on the podcast, but sometimes it's really powerful. And so with that in mind, I just feel like there are some spoken words that want to come through today. So I'm going to do it. But let's first talk about the rose dieta. So a dieta essentially is entering into a relationship with a specific energy. And you guys know all about my tobacco diet. I talked about it. And I have yet to diet anything else since. Now, of course, I do specific detoxes, diets, whatever word that fits your vocabulary that doesn't trigger you too much, because I know actually both of those words can be really triggering when you leave diet culture. So I apologize for that. But essentially, that's what it is. When I sit with grandmother medicine, there are things that need to be removed out of your diet to help you have a really beautiful experience, to help it feel safe, to help it be safe, and all those things. So it's a little different than that. Rather than just taking out sugars, red meats, salts from your diet, you're doing it because you are actually sitting with a plant, an energy, a crystal, a tree, whatever it is, for a specific amount of time. And you can actually diet grandmother. Obviously, it would need to be done with like deep regulation from an ethical shaman facilitator. Anyway, a diet is a specific relationship that you enter in, and you go on a dieta for it, a diet, which means you are removing everything you can out of your life that has an energy outside of this specific relationship. So you're literally getting and gaining, and I'm holding my rose tea as I talk about this. You're gaining a really deep relationship, and everything else is noise. And that's why you remove certain things out of your diet. And also with my tobacco diet, if you remember, I don't remember which episode it was. I can refer to it in the show notes so you can go back and listen to it if you're curious. But If you remember back then when I did the diet, I was in Hawaii in the jungle, and it was in a lot of ways easier. I mean, it was one of the hardest things I did as far as the intensity of that specific diet. However, it was easier in the way that it was a controlled experience. I was sent to, I took myself to a place, right? I was in the jungle. So I didn't talk, touch, look at anybody really. The food was provided for me. And this time is very different. This is my first dieta since the tobacco. I have been wanting to diet again with a plant, but it just never felt like the right time. And it also felt really difficult to do it at home with the energy of kids and a business. And we're finishing up construction in my home and the energy of just being in the 3D. There's a lot of beautiful symbolism and magic that happens when you dedicate yourself to go somewhere outside of yourself. And there's also a layer of disassociation because we can all go to retreats and find bliss because someone's handing us the plates of food, telling us what to drink, telling us to do this, right? They're guiding us through it, which is so important. And I don't ever want to dim that, but it takes a deeper piece of devotion to say, okay, I'm going to try this and I'm going to do it on my own. Now, of course, I haven't done this on my own. I have my guides and facilitators guiding me through this and helping me educate myself, not just for myself, but also so I can help my community go through these different diets as well, because I cannot believe how much we've lost the art of communion. We've lost the art of slowing down and honoring what we've been given to literally sit with and learn about. I am just absolutely blown away. And if you don't resonate with the depths or intensities that I do things, right? Like, okay, Rose Dieta, that seems extreme, which I'll go into more. Even just the intention of sitting with a cup of tea that doesn't have any other sugar or creamer in it. Like, what is the essence that you're sipping? What does it taste like to taste just the lavender or the chamomile or whatever it is? So that's what you're doing with the rose, except you go in with really deep, heavy intentions and prayers, and you keep those prayers alive throughout the time frame. And you can do, a diet for 10 days or for a whole month. This specific one is 10 days and it's with the rose. And I've always had a really beautiful connection with the rose. I have the rose in my branding for Wild Moon underwear, and I do these really, really powerful rose blessings at my retreats. I always have fresh roses in some way when I'm teaching in Simply Sensual. It's very symbolic of the womb, sexuality, the yoni, the vulva, and it's the highest frequency flower, if you didn't know that. And so it's something that I've always loved. And there's so many different beautiful colors, and the way that their petals open, it almost just feels like infinity when they're just like they open so beautifully. And then they're so unique in their colors, and they're so powerful and gorgeous, and yet they're so protective of themselves. They're so strong yet gentle, right? Because they're thorns and all these things. I've been feeling called to do it for about a year. And then I actually was talking to my elder, Amma, as I've been integrating from the training in Hawaii, and she was discussing about how I should take time to do a rose dieta. And I didn't know at the time just how powerful it would be for me. So essentially every day I will make a cup of tea with nothing in it but rose. And I got a lot of beautiful organic roses and rose buds, and everything that I consume, I try to have rose in it, and everything I consume is very bland. So I took out meats, red meats, sugars, salts, fruits. I didn't have fruits for the first maybe 6 days, and then I felt like I could introduce it back in. The thing about the rose is, depending on what plant you diet, depending on what you're dieting, because you can diet, like I said, a crystal or a tree or whatever it is, it's dependent on like how extreme the diet is. Most of the diets obviously are going to be pretty extreme because everything's information. So everything you're inputting into your mouth, everything you're watching, everything you're listening to is information. It's going to have an energetic field to come through and penetrate your field, right? So because of that, I try to limit what I'm eating. So it's eggs, rice, potatoes, things just really bland with no seasonings or salts. And I pour myself a tea morning and night. I pour myself a cup of tea along with, on my altar, I'll light a candle. I'll pour a cup for the altar, and then I will take different things filled with rose essence. I have some cacao with rose essence and other things in it. a tincture, some spray, and I have a powder with rose so I can like sprinkle it over my food. Let's see. And I just try to commune with the tea. You get the idea. So I am eating really clean and really bland for the main purpose of really being able to dive into the information in the rose. And everything else is just noise, right? So it's very important that anything I'm communing with, the hop I'm using has rose in it. So I've been on, it's day 9 today, and tomorrow's my last day. And I bring this up because it's just so wild. If you're still following along and listening to this podcast, I know that was kind of a long intro, but it's so wild, the information that is in the things that are on this earth. It blows my mind how much is accessible to us. So almost immediately, like around day 3, day 2, my nervous system settled. It was the first thing I noticed, how chill I felt, how calm I felt, how grounded I felt. It was one of the very first things. And I was talking to a dear friend of mine who's also done a Rose Dieta and has helped me so much understand all of the logistics. She's an incredible facilitator. She's the one that helps she serves at Medicina. And she was saying how the rose has nervine in it, which essentially nervine is a property that some herbs have that help support and nourish the nervous system. So I love actually so much that I didn't know much about the rose. Like I thought that I knew a lot. This is kind of how I've always done life, is I feel called to something and I don't question it. I immediately go in and feel into it immediately. One of my really sacred fans I use in medicine, it was the same thing. I didn't know what feathers they were. And then I found out what they were. And I was like, wow, this is massive. I didn't know what bufo was. And I just felt called and I went. I had no idea. I had never Googled grandmother. I had no idea. I just knew it was going to help me and I went for it. And that's literally been a huge theme in my life. And so with rose, of course, I've loved it, but I didn't understand the properties of it. And there have been so many things every single day that have blown me away that I did not know about the rose. It's antiviral, it's anti-inflammatory. I got a burn. There's so many things. I got a burn from actually my rose tea right in the middle of my chest, which was so interesting, like literally right in the middle of my chest. Maybe I'll share more about this on my Insta stories or do another podcast episode, but I really just wanted to touch on this very lightly. But I have to just talk about how many things I learned about the rose. It obviously helps move grief and opens your heart and just softens you. And I have felt so poetic. And every time I go to respond to somebody, it's like the words just flow so beautifully and open my mind. I feel like my mind is opening. And I think we are so used to being like, oh, well, there's either processed foods or psychedelics. There's not much in between. And what we don't realize is there's plant medicine. Plant medicine is rose. It's the rose. Plant medicine is lavender. And the properties that are in the rose are so profound. And she's just like waiting for you and me and all of us to listen to her, to steep her in tea, to put her on our food. She's literally made herself look so beautiful so that then we can go to her and be, drawn to her. And then we put her on our table, right? And then her flowers wilt. And then what do we do with the flowers? We throw them away. Rather than plucking them off, bathing in them, or keeping them and drying them and then seeping them, the dryness with the petals after we've, done it in the proper way, steeping the petals in tea and using them for the properties that she holds. And I have been blown open, but not in the way that I've been blown open with other plant medicines where I feel ungrounded, where I feel that I have to take a lot of time to integrate. Like I feel blown open in the most grounded way possible. There's nothing I could have done better to help me integrate just literally my life. And that's what she's helped me with. And I felt called to start her on the spring equinox, right? And it just happened to be that I was dieting the rose over my grandmother's birthday. She passed a few years ago. And then my mother's birthday was Sunday, and there was beautiful moments with her. I'm actually going to discuss it later on in the podcast. And then literally yesterday, my mom texts my group family feed, and she goes, today, 20, what did she say? Like 27 years ago, your father and I had our first call. And if you remember back in the other podcast, I have like 3 dads. And it was just wild because I do feel like the roses really helped me heal a lot of mother wounds, integrate the work that I've done around mother wounds, integrate the work I've done around opening up to my family and loving my family amidst differences, amidst judgment, amidst the feelings that I maybe wasn't accepted or whatever that was. And it's just crazy that these synchronicities have happened. And I just feel so lucky. And the cool thing about this specific dieta, which is I'm so grateful that I learned from an ethical lineage from my elders, that I've learned the sacred way of communing with the plants that we've been given, that with the earth elements. And it makes me sad that it's not more common. It makes me sad that instead what else are we doing to numb, or what are we doing to try to heal, or what are we doing to try to, like, there's so much sweetness. Oh, I wrote a song too. I will not be playing that on the podcast though. Don't worry. I mean, maybe sometime eventually, but not today. But it's so beautiful that we can have moments, if we choose, to sit in the sweetness of what's available to us, grown from the earth that supports us so beautifully. So I'm feeling very grateful. Oh, also, the topic of the conversation of the podcast, which is the eclipse. Wild that I'm doing this over the eclipse, wild, especially this full moon right now, this worm full moon in Libra. Is it in Libra? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in Libra. And it's affecting all of the cardinal signs. And your girl's got those cardinal signs. My Capricorn is my sun, my Cancer is my moon, my Aries is my rising, and I am feeling it. And one other thing, amongst the million other things that Rose has taught me and that I felt, is this emotional awakening. I've been very weepy every day. I don't suppress my emotions at all. I'm just not normally, that's not normally how I move energy, is through crying. I'll cry, but not, I have an open emotional center. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but man, I have been so beautifully, but I'm not just weeping because I'm grieving, or most of my movement with this rose hasn't been like sadness. It's been joy. It's been pleasure. It's been gratitude. It's been integrating all of these beautiful moments. Like you saw it in the last podcast with Jenna when she was talking about her father taking the time to sit with her. I still can't get over that. On the floor to listen to music. I still think about that, and it makes me emotional. And it's just been moment after moment every single day where I feel this deep opening of my heart. And I feel really grateful. We've actually had 2 opportunities to serve this week during the eclipse season. One was Sunday. We went to the Ronald McDonald House with our kids, and we brought a big thing of Legos, and we helped the kids there make Legos out of this like big bin of miscellaneous Legos. And I'm so grateful for Jeff, because Jeff and I, service is a massive thing for us. And I asked him to create some opportunities for us to serve this year, and he found these. And I'm just so grateful that he allowed my feminine to say, hey, let's do this. And then he created it from his masculine structure. I'm so grateful. And we also had another opportunity at the women's shelter today. And this is the next thing about the eclipse thoughts. So it's been interesting to see. I mean, I feel like I'm definitely ultra sensitive because of the rose, but wow, the sensitivity around the globe right now. Or even just, have you felt it? Do you feel it in your communities, in your homes? I've noticed it a lot in my containers, and also in the places I go. And, usually the rule of thumb is mind your business in the eclipse season, which essentially means like, stay out of people's way. Don't like be confronting people right now. Don't like be trying to be the savior in people's stories right now. Be kind at the grocery store, walk slowly at the grocery store. Like, mind your P's and Q's. Don't make sudden moves there. You're gonna feel like you want to make action. You're gonna feel all this stuff come up that is gonna make you feel like, yep, I have to do this and this and this. I am changing the world right now. But it's so important to just allow yourself to journal those feelings and then let it settle and then feel what you feel after. Because it's a little bit like a fever dream right now. And then once we get out of this eclipse energy, you're like, oh, right, I'm back. Okay. So that was a little bit aggressive. Maybe I didn't need to be so intense, right? Anyway, so I say that because we went and served at the women's shelter today in Salt Lake. And there's 200 women at this particular shelter. And Jeff and I are planning on doing this twice a month. I do like sporadic service throughout the year, but I really want a consistent time that I go just because I feel like I have space in my schedule now, which I don't think I did, especially as a young mom. And now my kids are in school all day. So we went, and I'm just continually amazed. What I noticed the most was this. Of course, I was blown away by my connection or my interaction with the women. Of course, I was touched by their smiles, and I was touched by their emotion behind their eyes. And I wanted to know their stories, and I wanted to sit down with them, and I wanted to understand. And of course, I was, touched by their emotion, and if they were sad or jittery from the drugs they were using, or, a lot of them, some of them couldn't speak, and some of them were yelling, and there was just anything you imagine, it was there. And I was touched by them, of course. And you can't leave a place like that without being affected and moved and motivated to continue to serve and find gratitude in every single moment of your home and in your life. But more than that, I was deeply touched by what happened in the kitchen. I found out that all of the meals are provided by a branch of the Catholic Foundation or something like that. Don't quote me. But essentially, they get funding and they make these meals and they feed many different shelters. And they also have people come to their steps. And whoever does gets meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I think they only provide lunch and dinner at this specific women's shelter. And it was a beautiful meal, spaghetti and meat sauce. And in the meat sauce, there was like onions and peppers and, steamed carrots and salad and all these things. And there's a few workers that worked there, and you could tell like they had been there a while. Like they knew every single thing that was on that shelf. They knew where every single Post-it note was. They knew what words were on the Post-it notes. They knew everything. And I walk in and I wash my hands with Jeff, and I'm all of a sudden completely teleported to this new world that I didn't know existed, yet it was living all along while I was at my home complaining about making dinner for my family or whatever it was that I'm doing in my life, right? And I'm not ignorant to the idea of lives being lived outside of my own. But it touched me so much because I walk over to the table and there's this old lady there who is just a spitfire. Adorable, petite, short, blonde cut, wearing these pointy red heel boots and these like parachute brown pants. And immediately, what's your name? And she's got this like adorable pink blush on. And we tell her our names. And she goes off and she's like, okay, so tell me where you got your education, like all these things. And I was like, this is so interesting. And then the other girl was like, oh, don't mind her. She used to work in education. She worked at the U. She was like the head of the special education department. And her husband used to be like the head of athletics at the U. And she was so funny. She was like, oh, I serve here multiple times a week because I'm retired. And what else am I going to do? And then she's like, I've been here for over 3 years. It's my favorite part of the week. I love the women. I know all by name. She's like, I do this so that I don't sit at home and shop all day. And I was so touched. And then there was a few other people that were talking, and yeah, I'm this person and I write, you know, I write this for this company, or I do this for this company, or I'm from Minnesota and I came here. And the second I came here, I usually have 3 volunteer jobs. But because of my new work, I told them that, listen, I will take this job, but I have to continue to have this specific volunteer job. And the job was like, absolutely, take your time off to volunteer. Like, what? I know people volunteer. I know this happens. I know there are portals, but it just touched me so much because nothing else mattered but this table that we were all sitting around cutting strawberries, these huge, massive bowls of strawberries, so that they could be made into smoothies for these women's breakfasts the next day. And it's just a teeny little kitchen in teeny little Salt Lake City and teeny little Utah and the teeny little space of the world. And yet I was teleported to a portal that took me to a place where nothing else mattered but feeding humans who didn't know where their next meal was going to go. And I've served in many soup kitchens and I've brought food to many places, but for some reason, it meant so much more to me today because of those women who sat around that table every single week to cut strawberries. And I think I was just so touched because it really got me out of my shit, you know? And as much as I volunteer, I could always do more. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to continue to do that. And it's right underneath our nose. Like, we make all these excuses. It's so funny. I'm like, mind your business and don't take action. And yet, like, we're doing new service activities during eclipse season. But I'm telling you, that's the time to especially to do this. But these service activities are right underneath our nose. And I think that there's what I'm learning from the rose, what I'm learning from just being a good human, what I'm learning from the human existence is like, existing is rough for a lot of people, and a lot of people have it really hard, and it's brutal. Humanity is brutal. And if I can just chop some strawberries on a Wednesday afternoon to help maybe, a few hundred women feel loved, because a lot of those women don't get any love from anyone. These are homeless women. This is, women's shelter, obviously, but these women are homeless and they get their meals and they go on the street and they have a place to stay, thankfully, at that place. But I don't know if they're shown a lot of kindness. And I just feel really grateful that I got to feel that perspective. I wrote this text to my family after I left. And I won't read you the whole text. I'll just read you the last part because I've essentially explained everything else that I wrote in the text. But I said, I feel like I entered a portal when I walked into the kitchen, a living ecosystem existing on volunteers and workers with tired smiles and hunched shoulders. I will visit that portal again soon, and it will remind me that everything outside of it means nothing, and everything when I get home. And yeah, I just felt like I wanted to share that. Why did I want to share that? I don't know. It just really touched me today. And maybe just to challenge you to find a way to go cut strawberries, find a way to go serve. I was really, really touched by the women that were serving in there. They knew each other's, backgrounds. They sit around and talk about, oh, how was your trip? And how was this? And how is your aunt? And how's your back? And oh my gosh, I heard you got in an accident. And how are you since your accident? Like, beautiful retired women who are just there to serve. And men and people who are just like all of us, but take the time to serve. And I feel really grateful. It was really sweet. They were like, Wednesdays are the best, come back, and blah, blah. And I feel like I want to be in that club. So I'm part of that club now, and I am signing up for that portal, and I want to get to know that kitchen, and I want to get to know about their summer plans. And that's what I'm planning to do. So there's that. That's my takeaway from that experience. And I guess this can go into my next rant that I wanted to talk about today on this episode of Eclipse Thoughts. The container that I'm holding with Sacred Rebels has been really powerful. And I bring this up directly after the women's shelter because I see in the spiritual culture, or I don't know, I just see this even on the internet where it was a huge trend to heal. It was a huge trend for a couple years to self-love. It was a huge trend to say that, we're not perfect, but we're getting better and we're healing. And then I saw the opposite, where it was shaming women for saying, oh, I need to heal. Or it was like, maybe you're addicted to healing, or I'm done healing. I'm ready for my blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just so interesting, the dynamic and the dichotomy and the yin and the yang of literally everything. And I find it so wild that people shame people for wanting to heal. And I find it so wild that there are people, and I'm totally judging right now, and I'm so sorry about it, but there's a point, I promise. I just have found that I feel activated when there are people out there that are like, we're not in our healing era anymore. Like, which I understand that there is a trauma bonding that can happen and people can get stuck in that loop. But it's so unfair for people who are just trying so hard, and for people maybe that have just begun, especially if you are in any way someone who is helping uplift, someone who is has courses for healing or awakening or subconscious reprogramming. Like, I just find it so fascinating, and I'm not telling anybody to do anything else. I'm just so grateful that I'm noticing the awareness for myself. That's what's so great about an activation is I can notice somebody doing something and I can say, okay, that's great for them. That's not me. I don't subscribe to that, right? And it's, in a way, spiritual bypassing. Okay, so we have these intense definitions. We have this trauma bonding, and then we have spiritual bypassing. So how can we find a middle ground? Guess what? And this is a theme that's going to go into Huberman, actually. The middle ground is yourself. Where are you at in your life? Where are you at? Can you actually stand in integrity for who you are and understand where you're at in your healing? And then can you hold yourself to a level of clarity for your audience so that you're not dumping on them what they should be or shouldn't be? What a gift it is that some people can come into people's community and see how beautiful it can be when they are done healing, how beautiful it can be when they change from healing through pain to healing through pleasure. That's all a part of it, right? But when people are so adamant that they're done with their healing, it just makes me feel so sad for those that are trying so hard to be healed. And I feel defensive a little bit about this because of this. I have women in my Sacred Rebels container of all areas. I have women who maybe feel like they've spiritual bypassed in the past, right? And so they're trying to find this energy of the yin and yang really beautifully. And I mean the yin and yang of understanding that life is literally meant to be hard and soft always, right? And then I have some maybe that could potentially, I literally have no idea if this is true. I'm just saying this is the variety of women I have in the Sacred Rebels, could potentially be like, oh, I'm continuing to find new things. This is great. That's not for me to judge. And then I have women that don't even know the definition. They don't even know those words, right? And I have women who were so brave to say, yes, I want this. They run business, right? They run a business and they're like, I want Sacred Rebels to learn more about myself so I can deepen that into my business. And they're finding pieces in themselves that they didn't even know were there. They didn't even know were there. And like, what a gift. And also how terrifying. And also imagine coming into a world now, brand new. And there's all of these guides, and there's all these people living their pleasurable, beautiful lives. And this person walks into it and she's just begun. And you have people saying, stop trauma bonding. You don't need to heal. You're healed. You're fine. And so she enters into the situation or enters into this life, and she finds something inside of herself that she actually does want to heal. And she doesn't have support, or she feels alone, or she feels confused as to, okay, so wait, I'm just like supposed to click my heels and I'm fine? Is that actually the point of what we're doing here? I'm pretty sure it's not. At least it's not for me. And it's not for the women that I help. And if I put myself down to mile 100 and I have people in my community coming in at mile 1 and they're uncovering things that they didn't even know was there, how can I hold them with empathy? And I wrote a poem about this that I want to share with you guys if you're still with me and if you're understanding anything I'm saying, because I think that this person at mile 1 who is just finding out this thing about her, I think that can happen with all of us, because something can hit us. We can be in the grocery store and a song will come on and we'll be like, whoa, what was that? Why did that affect me? Or we can be burned by rose tea on our chest and we can realize that there's something in our hearts that we've been holding on to that needs to be let go. And it can be in a balance of also joy and pleasure. That's the point. To me, that's the point. And I just felt so protective of this particular woman who, and there was no reason for me to be protective, just to be very clear. The community is so supportive. I just, as I have been since I'm wide open, and I'm a petally puff right now. That's actually what my friend called me. She's like, you're such a petally puff, because I literally am. Like, I'm a strong rose and also very open and tender right now in the best way. But I'm just, everything I'm absorbing is I'm taking in like really beautifully. And so when she was saying this, I just had this deep emotion come over me of empathy and also of protection of these women, of women in general, of everyone to just, I mean, I just think everyone should be drinking rose tea every day, first of all. And second of all, I really hope through healing, people's hearts stay open. Because when I think what happens when people spiritually bypass, or they say that they're healed or everything's fine, or I have nothing to do for that anymore, I think what happens is they close off their hearts to the potential of continuing to feel everything. And that's why we're in the 3D. And it can be okay. It's okay to weep. It's okay to find things. It's okay to be, maybe you don't have anything left to find. Maybe everything's uncovered. Maybe all rocks are unturned. But it's okay that a song makes you sad, right? It's okay that there's that a range of emotions. And I just was so blown away by her. I was so blown away by her bravery in sharing what she shared and what was brought up. And I was also so blown away with her spirit and her body being willing and ready to show her. And I use this metaphor of, and maybe I feel called to say this on eclipse season, because we could potentially all in our own way be feeling this idea that there's a wound that's coming up. There's a wound that we're noticing that we've like been bypassing. There's a wound that we're noticing that we've been neglecting, or that we've been hiding or pretending, like ignorance, that we don't actually see it. And maybe this eclipse season is showing us that we have a wound that needs to be uncovered. And I've been using this analogy for many years in my retreats and in my containers. And for some reason today, this morning, it wanted to come out as a poem. So I'm going to read you this poem called The Bandage. And wherever you're at in your healing journey, whether you've been sitting with plant medicine for years and you are in your pleasurable, feminine, juicy state and things are blissful, or whether you have no idea what I'm talking about, but you're curious and so you keep listening, This is for all of us and all of the bandages that we don't see. I visualize you and all of us doing the work to come home to ourselves, covered in dirty bandages that have now turned sour. The smell of them make you grimace, and yet you can't help but wonder what might be underneath them. And then you remember how strong you are. And the goddess within you holds your face in your hands and says, "It's time. I've got you. You've got you. Let's clean out the wound." So slowly you take off the safety pin that holds it, the safety pin that pretends to keep you safe. Its mask of shiny metal, now turned to green and yellow, practically cracks open when you touch it, as if its exhaustion is grateful for the release. One layer at a time, your fingers release the woven bandage. With each layer, your heart begins to race, your chest heavy, and your knees buckle. Finally, the bandage falls to the ground. You turn away, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and slowly gaze at the wound there for you to heal, caused by another, in a time too young to even comprehend. You are surprised at what you see. So stunned, your next exhale summons tears. As the tears drip into the wound, a loud inhale enters your chest, an inhale of relief and compassion. Instead of the wound looking terrifying and festered, it's simply there and has been there, just waiting for you to notice it. Yes, it's open, and yes, it needs care, but child, it is not beyond repair. But the bandages were sour. The festering bandages caused by the illusion of doubts to your power. The doubts disguise themselves in plain sight, holding you back from the light. What a tricky thing our mind is indeed. But I can heal you, you say through tears of doubt and relief. Little by little, I know I'm strong enough to mend you, to care for you, to clean you and nourish you. So you begin. One breath, one scream, one tear at a time. One letter you burn and one womb you hold, knowing that now is the time and you have the power. That's all I have so far. The bandage. And, one thing that I'm really grateful for with these different seasons, with eclipse seasons or full moons or Saturn returns or anything that happens astrologically that so many people fear, I love the awareness that's coming around it more and more, because the more awareness we have, the more we can utilize and take this energy and say, okay, where is this activating me? Because essentially, in my opinion, this energy is literally highlighting and illuminating wounds that we have not been able to see, wounds that we have maybe chosen not to see, right? And I just feel like I've been so blown away today with the courage and power of women and their actions and their bravery, and they're cutting strawberries and they're uncovering wounds. And I'm like, protect the women that cut strawberries and uncover wounds. Protect them at all costs, because that's what's going to make the world a better place. And not just the women that cut the strawberries and uncover the wounds, but the women that show up for the warm meals, the women that show up even on the drugs, shaking and talking to themselves to be fed, the women that choose to walk and fight, the women who choose to share their experience with a very famous neuroscientist, Huberman. And I don't have much to say about this, but I do want to talk about it because it's a theme here. I actually didn't read the article. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I don't know if you know who Huberman is. Huberman Lab. He's a very, very famous neuroscientist who has brilliant information and has a podcast where he brings on brilliant scholars who talk about brilliant things. And there was an article the New York Times just put out about him and this scandal or this way of life. I didn't read the article. Like I said, I've been paraphrasing it. I don't want to read the article. I don't think my opinion, first of all, means nothing. And second of all, I don't think my opinion needs the article. You'll understand why in a second. But long story short, it's pretty nasty, the article, from what I understand, from what I've read. And essentially 7 women are saying that he's been in 7 different relationships without them knowing. And it gets really nasty. Like, there's things that are past. There's really heightened emotional behavior included in that, where, emotional abuse that is being said and claimed, all these things. And people, of course, are upset. And people, of course, are devastated. And people are like, who do we believe? And is he going to say anything about it? And there's people that are like, oh, people are making it up because of cancel culture, right? And there's people like, help these victims and these women. And there's people like, I don't care about Huberman and his personal life. I don't care what he does. And although I haven't read the full article, I've been doing a little bit of research around this because I wanted to talk about my opinion on this. And I find it really disheartening that we live in a world where both sides of this narrative of the abused and the abuser have been taken so out of context, and there's been lies on both sides in history. I'm not saying it's here. I do not know who is the liar and who's telling the truth here, okay? I'll be very clear on that. But it's so crazy. The more that it gets exposed, the more I wonder, like, what's real and what's not. Not that I'm saying I don't actually believe that this is happening, because it absolutely could very well be happening. I just find it so sad that, and I actually felt this so deeply in my own sexual assault case, in my own lawsuit. The 2 times that I had to deal with lawsuit energy with lawyers, I was blown away. Talk about ignorance is bliss. You think people tell the truth? Are we still believing that people tell the truth here? Because I'm telling you right now, I cannot believe the lies that people will tell. That they believe. Do they believe? I don't even know. I actually want to do like a whole psychology class. Like, can I take a study in Harvard about the concept of lying and what it does to our neuro pathways and what it does to our brain and how we eventually believe that we're right? I don't even know. Who knows? What I'm saying is this. I am blown away by this idea that there are 2 sides that believe they're right. And it's so sad to me when they get aired out in public, first of all, because I do believe that justice needs to be prevailed. But second of all, there's always something more to the story. And it's so sad to me that this continues to happen. And it bugs me so bad. And at the end of the day, we will never, unless we are one of the girls in this situation, or unless we are Huberman, we will never know the full truth. So with that knowing, what are we going to do about the information that we're given? What are we going to do? How are we going to handle it? Because honestly, that's how you handle it. There are so many opinions of like, off with his head, or like, oh, this is just cancel culture, which actually I don't know if I agree with either of them. Clearly the dude, if this is correct, this is jacked up and inappropriate, because this is why. Not that I think polyamory is inappropriate or having multiple relationships inappropriate. It is inappropriate, though, when it is done not in transparency, when it is done out of integrity, when it is done secretly. That is when it's disturbing and difficult and sad. And there's the other side to this where they're saying, this is just cancel culture. This means nothing because he's just a scientist. So keep his personal life out of it. Yes. Yes. And also, he is a wisdom keeper of wellness. So he's like promoting all these beautiful things, and yet there's this shadow that is really upsetting. So why am I saying all this, and does it make any sense? Ultimately, to me, this is another example of us being able to come back home to ourselves. This is yet again another example of us potentially putting somebody on a pedestal, creating this godlike attribute, creating this elevated state in someone, falling. Isn't that what we said the age of Aquarius is going to be? Everything that we have put on a pedestal is going to fall. Foundations, institutions, people. I don't know if he's necessary. I don't actually believe cancel culture is actually possible, by the way, because people can continue to show up and show up and show up, which I think that they should. I don't necessarily think we should stone them in the streets, but I think it's actually so beautiful when things get exposed, because I'm telling you right now, we all have shadows. And if they haven't been exposed yet, they're going to be exposed. My shadows were exposed when I was living out of integrity. Absolutely, they were. And I'm so glad that they were. Are you kidding? If I was still in the shadow, I would not be here today. So this is great. I feel like I feel very sad for the women, but I'm specifically just talking about Huberman now, because anybody who's exposed has an opportunity to gain right relation with themselves, not for anyone but themselves. Okay. So that's a whole other piece. And then there's the piece of the community, of the person that's watching him, right? That piece is up to us. That piece is up to us. What are we going to do with this information? Only you can decide. Are you going to stop watching him? Only you can decide. Do you believe these women? Only you can decide. They have no reason to lie. And we've seen deception in the past happen on both sides, which can make, this is what's happening here. Do you see what's happening here? Is because there's been deception on both sides, it's making us crazy. It's like, is anybody telling the truth? Like I said, is anybody telling the truth? No one knows the truth but you. And the only way you can sift the truth for yourself is if you're only living in integrity with yourself first. Okay, so he has this shadow. We always talk about reflections and, oh, he's a reflection of us. And I'm not saying that you're doing this with people. I am just saying, what is it illuminating within you? What shadow is it illuminating? Are you making this such a big deal because you put him on a pedestal? Because I'm telling you, if we continue to put people on pedestals, they are just going to continue to shatter them. The only person you should put on a pedestal is yourself. The only person. So whatever you believe, whatever the story you believe, I want you, first and foremost, to believe the truth that you believe, and then let that expand from there. Now, the piece of the women, it's absolutely devastating. I find it so disgustingly sick that we live in a culture where we doubt this. I'm not saying I ever doubted it for 1 second. I'm just saying that that has been the history of some particular cases, right? And so, of course, I hope the women find peace. Of course, I hope the women find healing. Of course, I actually hope that I mean, maybe the New York Times fabricated it. Who the hell knows? Who knows? Can I even say that? Don't come after me, anybody. These are just speculations, and I'm no one. But I do want to bring all these pieces to the puzzle, because it's important for us to not put people on pedestals and to only believe our truth. Have you always had the ick about Huberman? Have you always been weird about him? Have you always had a huge crush on him? How does it change now? How does it change now, knowing all this information? I am blown away with every single time I enter into something new, and a new modality, a new person, a new blah, blah, blah. I find somebody that inspires me, a new guide. I get to know them, or I get to know their humanness, and I'm like, oh, they're just like me. I'm not saying I have 7 girlfriends in the shadows, but what I'm saying is everyone has shadows. It's just a matter if they've become friends with them or not. It's a matter if they've befriended their shadow. It's a matter if they're doing it, if they're understanding their shadow and integrity. And it's a matter of, what are you putting on them? How are you seeing them? How are you portraying them? What is the facade that they're playing in your mind? Are they your savior? Are they your guide? Because every pedestal will fall. And I find it so wild that the whole Diddy thing came out, which is so sad. I'm so glad that hopefully he can get captured. And I love that this came out about Huberman. He's such a facade in his relationships anyway. And I just think it's all going to come out. All the shadows are going to come out. And so, how can we learn from this and become more in right relationship with ourselves and become more and more clear about ourselves? And I'm really proud of those women. I really am. Whether it's a completely fabricated story or whether it's women that were so, so brave, I am so proud of them for being brave and showing up and sharing. And that's really all we can do, because I can sit here all day and talk about my sexual assault and talk about my upbringing and talking about my certifications and my education. And there are people that won't believe me, right? There are people that think I talk out of my ass, and I do not care, because I sit here with deep integrity, with humble integrity, knowing that I don't know a lot of stuff. But the things that I do know, or the things I contemplate, or the things I want to discuss, I will discuss with you guys. And that's me actually not minding my business during eclipse season. I'm definitely not minding my business. And this goes into my next topic, healing parent wounds. Speaking of pedestals, there is nothing more painful. Okay, let me go back. I'm going to write this down as a note so I remember. Open head problems. I posted a video on my mom's birthday of me and my mom. It was an older video of like us taking a picture together. And on the picture, I said, I'm going to pull it up and read it, because I want it to be clear what I said. I said, when the quiet, conservative Mormon mom and the wild, loud, freaking daughter have a deeper relationship now more than ever, because they both choose love over being right. And then I wrote her a poem. And you can go read the poem on my post if you want. We don't need to take time. Should I read the post? This was one of my dieta days where I woke up and I sat in front of my altar and drank my tea. And I thought, it's my mom's birthday. And we actually recorded ourselves singing a song and sent it to her. And I sat on my altar and I said, I'm going to write her a poem. I want to write her a poem. And instead of writing a poem around something else related to her, it was all about motherhood, because to me, that is what she is the mother, right? And especially in my family, because she was the oldest of 8 children. And then she had 8 children, and then there were 6 steps. So there's 14 of us. And she's a mother to a lot of those grandchildren. And she's juggling a lot of things. She's actually never watched my kids because we live far away, and she's so busy. And on that, I genuinely glitched when I wrote that and posted it, because I genuinely didn't think that would ever happen, that I could feel brave enough to post something like that, because there's been like some pretty painful judgment and disconnection with us. Most of it unsaid, actually. For a long time, not even, we're just such different people. And yeah, I found it really interesting that it's now on her birthday, while I have my rose, that I'm integrating this. So I had many comments asking, like, how did you get here? Like, do you have a podcast on parent wounds? And I would love, to learn about that. And I would actually really love to have my mother on the podcast. She's super private, so I'll never say never. But when I tell you that this is literally just happened Sunday, when we were able to communicate even just the teeny bit of words of I love you and I support you. Now, of course, we say I love you to each other often, but there have been many moments where there's been times where I've been reprimanded or judged or told that I'm portraying a certain thing she just feels so confused by. And for whatever reason, instead of coming back at her, trying to defend myself or attacking back or cutting off the relationship, I loved instead. And there was one particular moment about 2.5 years ago where after the conversation, I specifically texted actually my father and I said, we will not be talking about beliefs ever again. Please honor that. And there was some things said that were really, really hurtful to me. And I could have easily walked away. Because a lot of the journey that I've been on has been a lonely one and confused a lot of my family. And I chose instead the route of love and the route of giving love in my own way that I can with my own boundaries. And after that meeting, I had to grieve a little bit and go through my own process and do some of my own healing. And then I kept showing up. And I kept showing up. And I really think that there was a glitch in the matrix that happened in relationships because I just kept loving. Even when I felt maybe there was judgment or confusion or, wait, what's she doing here? Not like I ever thought that was really the case, but most of the time when there's different beliefs in homes, there's like a blowout or a conversation that goes sour. And then that's like, okay, bye, see you never. And instead I just kept showing up. It was almost like, I don't want to say it was an experiment because it wasn't. It was a deep desire. And my mother and I's relationship is very unique. Like she's never watched my kids and she shows up when she can, but she's very torn in many different places. And so the time that I get with her, I really, really, really cherish. And it's probably very little compared to other people's mothers' relationships and time. So it's funny when I talk about how to heal a parent wound, because I've done it in a little bit of an unorthodox way where I held a boundary and it was held to the point where I knew that it wasn't going to be talked about. And yet when I was home, I knew I was different and it was uncomfortable. And yet I kept showing up because that love was there. And I could see my mom was trying. Like I could really see she was trying. And I just kept holding out hope. And I want to go back really quick to the pedestal situation. I think I am going to read this poem about my mother just because it feels like I should. But when I began my journey, my spiritual journey years ago, like 2015, and maybe even before that, we talk about pedestals. And I remember the idea of a parent pedestal. And it really actually devastated me because there's a point in an adult's life, there's a point when you reach adulthood where you realize how little space there is between you and the parent. Does that make sense? Where you've been worshiping and putting your parents on this huge pedestal. And then you realize when you're an adult and your world comes crashing down and you're like, wait, what do I believe? Is this actually what I believe? Do I still believe what I was taught? And then you see the humanness in your parents because you see the humanness in you and you become a parent and you're like, oh my gosh, everything starts to click more and your prefrontal cortex is developed and it's just like mind blowing. And it's devastating. And it's also really powerful because the person that you looked up to more than anything in your life actually is just like you. And I bring the pedestal up because it was a huge piece in, first of all, exposing the wounds of honoring their beliefs and then also honoring mine. It helped me, the pedestal piece helped me realize that I'm okay to have my own beliefs, that I'm okay to see the wounding within my parents, that I'm okay to see that they were doing the best they could, that I'm okay to see how incredible they are, because they are. And also it can also be that pieces of it were painful. And that was a really big piece for me because she became so much more than a mother to me. She became a friend, and she became a human, an imperfect human. And I think because of that, I was able to give her a lot of grace. And I think when we talk about parent wounds, we put our parents off so much pedestal that if they don't live up to the pedestal, we immediately cut them off or we get so hurt. That's when the mother wound comes in and the father wound, right? There's so many pieces to that energetically, but when we just assume that they know better, when we assume that they know not to hurt us, or they know what to say, or they assume that they can love us in a certain way that we desire, it hurts both of the people. And so when we can really look at it and actually even do a practice where you can speak to the 12-year-old within them and the 12-year-old within you, that's when you can start healing parent wounds, because then the bitterness starts to soften. Because then you can say, okay, where are they at? If they're going through their own suffering and they're trying to find their own truth and they're trying to find who they are, what does that mean about them? And how am I in them and them in me? So there's a huge piece that I hope helps bring you some perspective as you try to navigate these wounds within your parents. There's this empathy piece that I think is really important. This compassion piece is really important. Easter's on Sunday. And although I have a very different relationship with Christ now, he will always be my homie. He's here right now. My meditating Jesus is on my desk. If you watch it on YouTube, he was one of the greatest shamans and guides. And if there's one thing that I love from him, especially now, is his Christ consciousness, which essentially is he was a wonderful example of what we could be if we live in that consciousness, which is deep compassion, service, love, right? Radiating that out of us. The cool thing about Christ, this is a little rant on Christ in honor of Easter Sunday. And for anybody who's also struggling with Easter this year, or it means something different this year for them than it did before, I see you. And it's a beautiful opportunity to create new memories, to get Easter dresses still if you want, and to create different relationships with honoring the beautiful story of Christ, just like the beautiful stories of Mary Magdalene and the beautiful stories of Athena and Isis and all of our other ascended masters. And I love that we can I really still love this beautiful week, Palm Sunday, Holy Week, because it brings definitely a sense of compassion into everyone's hearts. And if there's one thing that another thing that I really love about Jesus is that he never wanted himself to be on a pedestal, ever. He was hanging with the whores. He was in all of the places with the homeless. Like, he didn't want to be on a pedestal. He didn't want to be where the money was, right? And he can show us that. That's another example that we can show, that we can feel now, that if we can just show compassion to these people that raised us and step them off of the pedestal of even just a parent. Maybe they don't know more than you do. Maybe they know what they think. Maybe they know the best that they know. When you can come at somebody from that compassionate place, everything shifts. And it just makes everything less scary. So that's the first piece I want to talk about with parent wounds. And then of course there's the piece of of both sides having accountability, of both sides having integrity. And in the example of my mother and I, there was never there, at least there hasn't yet been a time where we've sat down and been like, yeah, I'm sorry. Or she's like, I'm sorry. Like, we shouldn't have said those words. Or, it's never been that. And I don't know if it actually never ever needs to be that. If you feel like you're holding out for an apology from your parent, I invite you to write a letter to them. Write a letter to them of how you're feeling, and burn the letter during the eclipse season, or save it, but don't send it. Some of my most powerful reclamations of relationships have happened in the ethers, in the subconscious, not in the consciousness of words. My mom is a woman of small words. And every time we say I love you to each other, which is often, it heals, because there's actually never been a time where she hasn't said it. I mean, there will be, especially back in the day, just because she's so busy, weeks. I don't know if there's been months that we haven't talked, at least text. We don't talk on the phone often, but we text a lot. And yeah, even though there's been a lot of moments where I think back then I would have loved to have an apology. Justin, I love you now is a lot. It means a lot. And the I love you wouldn't even happen if I didn't show up for the I love you, if I wasn't willing to say I love you too. There's a shift that happens when you show up in accountability and love and integrity, even if the other person can only show up in the way that they can, in the way that their 13-year-old self can, or in the way that they know how. So when I say when two people come together in accountability and integrity, that's going to look different for every relationship. And you might have an expectation of what that looks like, but maybe be open to letting that look different. Letting that look different than your dream idea. Maybe hold on to that still, because that could always still happen. Maybe at down mile 10. Right now, we're at mile 1. She sent me a text after I wrote her the poem, and she's just a woman of little words. And I actually really love that about her. We're just so different. And it was like a paragraph of how much that poem meant to her. And then I actually sent the reel to my sister, who's still very active in that Mormon church. And I was like, should I post this? And I've also had some really deep, beautiful healing moments with her too. I have really powerful, supportive, loving sisters. But anyway, I sent it to her and she goes, absolutely post it. And I posted it, and my mom sent another text back. Oh, I'm crying again. Thank you, honey. And you know what I said to her? For the first time ever, man, you guys are getting everything on this podcast. I'm like really going there. I said something like, thank you. I was like, I've been weepy all day thinking about how much I love you and how much you love me. Thank you for supporting me and loving me and trusting me. And she just said, love you, honey. And even just me saying those words helps me be accountable that, like, I know somewhere in her, she does support me, even if it's hard, even if it's confusing, even if it terrifies her. And it only happened because I was patient, because I had compassion, because I tried so hard to have Christ consciousness within that. And I saw that she was trying too. That's a huge piece. And if your mom isn't there yet, or if your dad isn't there yet, or maybe they've passed, I invite you to continue to look within you to see where you can heal this relationship with your parents to the point, at least, that you can have gratitude. And I know that's a super surface level. I'm saying that to everybody. I don't know your experiences. I don't know your relationships. I understand that. I don't know your pain. I don't know what happened. But I do know, I really do know, at least I feel like I know now. This is the one thing that I do know, that when you can come to a place of love and understanding from a relationship rather than animosity, it will heal you in ways, it will open your heart in ways that nothing else can. Because the animosity is just giving them power. It's just keeping the power to them. and it holds you back in so many ways. And I have never regretted, never once, giving love in a place of boundaries rather than shutting off and being annoyed and bitter and hurt and sad for forever. Of course, there was a place in my life I had to be that. Of course, because I had to feel the grief. I had to feel the rage. But I did it in a private place, in a safe, sacred place where I knew I could be with my own self through plant medicine, through retreats, through loneliness, through yoni jarmuring, through so many things. And I pray those of you who are struggling with strained relationships, I deeply pray that you can find peace. And I'm saying a prayer to all of the women that I've seen. I mean, I'm saying a prayer for humanity always, but the women especially, I mean, they can just continue to blow my mind. I'm saying a prayer for all the women who have been victims, who have suffered, who have wounds that are sour, and who are just trying to get to their next meal. And I pray that you, they, them, us, we, me, I can find compassion and Christ consciousness sometime soon. I hope that we can all feel this eclipse energy for our benefit to help us look at the wounds, to help us illuminate the shadows, to help us befriend the shadows rather than living in the shadows out of integrity. Because I do believe that there's a space for that for everyone. I love you all. I changed my mind. I don't think I'm going to read the poem because it feels like this is a really good closing to this podcast. And let me know if you like this kind of style of podcast, because that was just an hour and a half of ranting about eclipse energy and shadows and women. But I hope it touched you in some way. And I hope that you can really harness this energy. And I hope above anything else, you can find the wild within you. And that you can remember that you are never too much and always enough. And that you're rare, a diamond. There is no one like you. My light sees and honors the light within you and never compares it. Have a beautiful day.